I was born with a beautiful face. As was my sister, we looked almost identical. In my previous life, a single imperial decree sent her into the palace in my stead. I watched her slender figure disappear into the golden gates and turned away. Into the arms of my childhood sweetheart, the young general. She rose through the ranks to become a favored consort, while I married into the general's household. Years later, when turmoil swept the empire and assassins came for the emperor, I, once the general's wife, was branded a traitor and hunted down as a consort. It was only in the moment of my death that I learned the truth. My sister and I were half-sisters, sharing only the same father. When I opened my eyes again, I was reborn. I died on the night of the New Year's festival, beneath a sky ablaze with fireworks. It could have waited until the Festival of Blossoms. But Sylvia and Hugh were far too impatient. When the beggars finally finished, they climbed off me, looking utterly pleased. After dressing and straightening their tattered clothes, they slung their arms over each other's shoulders and left the dungeon. Laughing, I lay on the filthy straw, pain keeping me conscious, but even that couldn't compare to the agony in my chest. Soft footsteps approached. Sylvia covered her nose delicately with a snow-white handkerchief. "Sister, hadn't. What would he think if he saw you like this?" I stared at her innocent, cherubic face, still unwilling to accept it. "Why?" I whispered. I couldn't understand. The three of us had grown up together. As her elder sister, I had never treated Sylvia poorly. Especially after she entered the palace, I sold my jewelry and shops just to ensure her life there was safe and comfortable. When I married Hugh, I used my dowry to restore the general's household. When he was framed and imprisoned, I went sleepless for days, knocking on doors, enduring humiliation and scorn, even falling ill just to win him a chance to prove his innocence. And yet, the man I loved most and the sister I cherished most had joined hands in this dark, airless dungeon to sever my tendons and defile me. They even wanted me dead. Why? I could never understand. Sylvia smiled a radiant, dazzling smile that carried no trace of guilt. "Because he thought it was me that night," she said sweetly. "I know you'd never tell him the truth, but it's better if the dead keep their mouths shut." A laugh escaped me before I could stop it. Perhaps I had suffered too long in this wretched place. Or perhaps learning that Sylvia and I were only half-sisters had already numbed me. Now that the truth was laid bare, I could only think how foolish she was. 5 years. For 5 years, Hugh claimed impotence to the world. Stayed out all night with the excuse of military duties. Even borrowed money from my maternal grandfather under the pretense of military shortage. And all of that because he believed the girl who had helped him win the lantern contest years ago was Sylvia. Indeed, Sylvia and I looked alike. She had always been the capital's famed prodigy, the darling of every gathering. But few knew that every mistake she made, I had taken the blame for. Even if he did know, he wouldn't have believed it. After all, people only love what is perfect. I looked at Sylvia again, and her smile only brightened. "Don't worry," she said lightly. "You won't be lonely on your way to the underworld. Grandfather's already there waiting for you." I froze, a sudden chill clutching my heart. "What do you mean?" Sylvia waved her hand carelessly. "He always favored you. So I told him that if he wanted to save you, he'd have to trade everything he owned. After all, he was a merchant rich enough to rival a kingdom." She laughed, her tone mocking. But who would have thought poor old man handed everything over, only to drop dead that very day? Dead. Grandfather was dead. My mind went blank. Only a high-pitched ringing filled my ears. "That's impossible," I murmured. "Why? He was your grandfather too. Why would you? But she only smiled. In my mind, his kindly face surfaced again. After learning the truth about my birth, I often remembered how he would ask when I was little, "Nora, do you ever miss her?" I hadn't understood then. Now I did, but it was too late. I hadn't cleared my name. Hadn't told him that I missed my mother. Hadn't promised that I would care for him in her stead. How could he be gone already? Tears blurred my vision as I wept uncontrollably. Then a voice, having fulfilled my sigh, cold and filled with disgust, cut through the sound of my sobbing. "Let's go. Don't stand too close to her, she's filthy." My heart twisted like a snake coiling around its prey. I lifted my gaze just in time to see Hugh pull Sylvia into his arms and walk away. Filthy? A bitter laugh tore from my throat. Did he not think himself filthy when he defiled his own wife with beggars? When he lay with Sylvia behind my back? I thought of my mother, whom I had never met. Of Lily, heading till Sylvia, who died for me. Of my grandfather, who gave everything. Hatred flared in my chest, drowning out the pain. I dragged myself upright, ignoring the agony of my severed tendons, pulled a hairpin from my hair, and hurled myself at them with a scream. Adulterer! Adulteress! Even in death, I will never. Before I could finish, Hugh kicked me square in the chest. My skull struck the stone wall. The pain was blinding. Warm blood gushed from my mouth and nose, staining my pale yellow gown. Fireworks burst outside, their colors spilling through the narrow window onto my trembling hands. I still clutched the hairpin tightly. Grandfather once told me, "The New Year's dawn marks a new beginning." Your Grace? The metallic taste of blood vanished. The crackle of fireworks faded into silence. It was midsummer, humid, bright, and stifling. My thoughts whirled as my gaze fell upon the familiar, frightened face before me. Lily, the maid who had died long ago. So heaven had taken pity on me after all. I wasn't dead. I was back in the days before my downfall. Before my name was disgraced. Before that hellish dungeon. Your Grace. Please don't be too sad, Lily murmured gently, thinking my silence was grief. His Majesty will uncover the truth and prove your innocence. A smile tugged at my lips. In that case, I said softly, go to the Golden Throne Hall and summon His Majesty here. Joy flashed across her face. Yes, heading for Sylvia's session. Your Grace. In my previous life I met Lily because I often accompanied Sylvia to the palace. I thought it would be a fleeting acquaintance, never imagining Lily would die on my account. The memory is distant now, but I still remember that day's torrential rain, and how the tiles outside Changshi Palace seemed to be carpeted with bright scarlet flowers. Watching that receding silhouette, my eyes blurred. This time, I will protect you. I woke up in Changshi Palace 2 days ago. 2 days were enough for me to sort everything out. After sending a letter to my maternal grandfather, I planned the path forward. Peach. I'm busy. Your Highness, what does the lady command now? Peach hurried into the hall. A trace of annoyance threaded her obliging tone. She was Hugh's mole planted beside me, and these last few days I'd been needling her at every turn. I kept my expression calm as I stared at Peach's face, a smile lifting one corner of my mouth but never reaching my eyes. To receive an honored guest, of course. A moment later the soft patter of raindrops and the rustle of parasols drifted from outside the hall. I looked up to see Hugh approaching in his red official robes, led by an attendant. Behind him walked my once dear sister. Hugh and I had grown up together. We had always been inseparable. In the days I suffered punishment for Sylvia's sake, he would scale the walls to slip me snacks, his eyes full of pity. At that age, when everything was still budding, he wanted to defend me from everyone. If it's Sylvia's fault, why must you take the blame? You're the elder sister, what does that matter? I'll go explain to Tyler. I'll tell him he's mistaken. Back then I always stopped him, saying Sylvia was still a child, frail and unable to endure hardship. I remember the day we married, his eyes were swollen with tears. Why? Because at last he had married me. I often round in the overflow of love in his gaze. I thought his eyes were the everlasting flower I had searched a lifetime for. But now everything and everyone had changed. Indeed, once a woman succumbs, she cannot simply cast it off. The palace maids left the hall. It was just the two of us facing one another. Hugh's appearance was unchanged from my memory. Only his dark eyes had grown colder. As for me, the sincere heart I once bore had been replaced by a cup brimming with hatred. I know you have many doubts, but Sylvia and I truly love each other, he said. You've always been magnanimous, do not pry any further. Sylvia has always been delicate. She cannot take suffering. Stay in the palace for a few more days and behave yourself. I'll arrange things, you will be able to fake your death and leave the palace. I paused. He admitted to feeling for Sylvia, yet this was unlike the last life. In that instant I realized, Hugh had been reborn too. Before I could speak, Sylvia was already weeping. Her tears like a pear blossom in rain. Sister. It's all Sylvia's fault. Sylvia is to blame. If you want someone to blame, blame Sylvia. Please don't blame Hugh. Her performance was exactly as it had been before. To switch identities was a crime of deceiving the sovereign. Worse. Sylvia enjoyed the emperor's favor if we were discovered. Even extermination of our 9 generations would not be an exaggeration. In my last life I had given half my strength to secure Hugh's title. To protect the honor of the general's household. Even to spare the lives of thousands tied to both families. I had pleaded sincerely. Hugh. Sylvia, this is treason against the sovereign. Have you considered that this course will drag both families into an endless abyss? Sylvia has always enjoyed His Majesty's grace. Until the evidence is conclusive. The Emperor will surely protect Sylvia. Hugh. You always listen to me. Heed my counsel, stop. Saving Sylvia may not require this path. What happened then? Sylvia, claiming she would not burden us, nearly hurled herself headfirst against a palace pillar. Hugh caught her in time. She sobbed so violently in his arms my heart ached. That was the first time after our marriage he spoke to me with cruelty. Sylvia is your sister, how can you be so heartless? Leaving her to die? After so many years. I was blind to see the wrong person. You truly are a selfish, jealous shrew. Though I sensed this strange reflex in his protectiveness towards Sylvia, I still, by instinct, chose to trust him. In the end I compromised. Foolishly, having fulfilled my desire. I believed he would come for me when I was cast out of the palace. But in secret he forged letters proving that I conspired with an enemy state, fabricated evidence that I had an affair with the guard. I even remember the night they threw me into prison, and he humiliated me before everyone, a wanton who cannot tolerate solitude. Once imprisoned, there was no turning back. Now, looking back, it was I who had been blind. Seeing me silent, Sylvia cried on, Sister. I know you resent Sylvia, but I truly love you. If sister can forgive Sylvia, anything you ask, Sylvia will do. She thought she had me exactly where she wanted, but she'd miscalculated. I sipped my tea with composure and let a mocking smile curl my lips. If you want my forgiveness, why not kneel? Sylvia, mid-cry, froze for a moment and, after a stunned pause, moved as if to kneel. Hugh hastily pulled her back. Enough, he snapped. Sylvia is your sister. When did you become so overbearing? Is that your nature? Always pretending to be magnanimous while you're really repulsive? Look at that. The protection sprang up at once. I set down my teacup and rose to face him. Overbearing? Hugh did not hesitate to step in front of Sylvia. Disappointment and disgust were plain in his eyes. What do you intend to do? Up close, having fulfilled my desire. His features, so near, stirred all the hatred I'd been nursing. It could no longer be contained. Slap. The crisp, waved out a low sigh. Resonant sound of a palm striking flesh filled the hall. I had put all my strength into it. A numbness spread through my hand. A clear handprint bloomed across Hugh's left cheek. I said. You brazenly make adultery sound normal. Who is it that disgusts others? Hugh was stunned. I had always been mild by nature. Given how well he knew me, he must have realized, in that instant, who I had become. I did not care. Sister. How could you slap? Another crack. Sylvia's pale face flushed and swelled. Hugh, furious, veins standing at his neck, seized my throat with one hand. Nora, apologize to Sylvia. If you apologize, I might spare you for old time's sake. If not, I do not mind killing you once more. His grip wasn't particularly strong. I couldn't help but laugh at his words. Affection? There was no affection left between us, none at all. Back in prison, Sylvia used to flaunt those glaring kiss marks before me, recounting with girlish delight how Hugh had made love to her, over and over. What bound the three of us now was not love, but hatred so deep it could never be untangled. Nora, are you deaf? Hugh's voice was sharp, venomous. Sylvia is kind-hearted. Unlike you, a woman with poison in her veins. She may not stoop to quarrel with you, but I will not forgive you in her stead. If you won't apologize to her, Then I'll just kill you here and now. His fingers tight and around my throat. What are you doing? A deep, let out a low sigh. Commanding voice rang out from the distance. The hand at my neck froze. Then abruptly released me. Though Hugh hadn't truly strangled me, I let myself fall to the ground. Coughing. My fingers brushing the bruises forming on my throat. Sylvia could play this game. So could I. Tears welled up instantly, spilling down my cheeks in trembling drops. I looked up at the newcomer. Voice hoarse and broken. Your Majesty. The man who entered was strikingly handsome. His brow exuding an unquestionable authority. He wore a dragon robe embroidered with gold threads. A crown set with dazzling jewels. Broad shoulders. A narrow waist, every inch of him radiated imperial dignity. It was the Emperor himself, Eric. Hugh and Sylvia dropped to their knees at once. Eric paused for a moment, his gaze flicking over them, before he stepped forward and helped me up. Outside the hall, Peach, the maid who had tried to stop the Emperor's approach, was dragged away by guards. That very night, word swept across the entire capital. The two gifted Nora sisters had quarreled publicly, and chaos had ensued. For the sake of his wife, Hugh had dared speak insolently to the Emperor's favored consort. The consequences came swiftly. Hugh was suspended from duty for a month. Sylvia was given 20 blows of the cane and confined to her manor for 2 months to reflect and learn propriety. Yet, out of love for his wife, Hugh volunteered to bear the punishment in her stead, so 20 strokes became 30. The reason was simple: he had offended the imperial dignity, and such insolence could not go unpunished. Still, Hugh enjoyed public favor and had the king's backing. To punish him further would have been politically unwise. As for me, my confinement was lifted, and with the Emperor's eyes now upon me, Hugh could no longer fabricate charges or have me framed at will. When news of Sylvia's punishment reached the Nora estate, no one took it harder than Sharon, the family matriarch. If not for Father Tyler's steady hand and careful persuasion, she might have stormed the palace that very day. Yet within days, she did exactly that, sending a secret letter to the palace while Father was away at court. "You've lost your mind," she shouted the moment she saw me. "Your sister worked so hard to earn her place, and now you've repaid her kindness with betrayal. I can't believe I gave birth to such a thankless, heartless creature. My poor Sylvia. Suffering all this for your sake." Clearly, hading fulfilled Laodicea. Both families knew about the identities which all along, only I had been kept in the dark. "How dare you shame us like this?" she continued, trembling with anger. "Your father and I raised you with every hardship, and this is how you repay us? You'd better go and apologize to Sylvia," begged the Emperor to release her from her punishment, "or I'll disown you myself. Your father will too. Don't think that just because you're now a consort you can stand without our family's support. Let's see how long you last in the palace once the Nora name is gone." I couldn't help but laugh. "What are you laughing at?" Her expression turned wary. "You did raise me," I said evenly. "That's true. But whether it was with hardship and devotion, I'm not so sure. Am I right, Mother?" "Oh no, no." I corrected myself softly. "I should call you Aunt. Shouldn't I?" Her face blanched instantly. What are you saying? I'm your mother. What nonsense are you spouting? Don't tell me you've been listening to rumors." But her eyes betrayed her. She wouldn't even look at me. I stepped closer, my tone calm, but my gaze like frost. "Isn't it true? My real mother was your elder sister. Wasn't she, Aunt?" Sharon's face twisted between shock and fear. For that, I suppose I should thank Sylvia. Had she not gloated after my imprisonment in the last life, revealing every secret with cruel delight, I might never have known why I had always been treated like an outsider in the Tyler household. I could almost hear her voice again. "Your mother never knew. You know. She never knew that the reason she lost everything, her home, her husband, her life, was because she stood in their way. Because she stood between our father and my mother. Did you know? The day your mother gave birth to you was the same day mine gave birth to me. And guess where Father was then? By my mother's side, of course." Now, staring at the face before me, face faintly resembling the mother I had lost, I felt a strange mix of bitterness and grim satisfaction. Perhaps I really had gone mad. After all I'd endured, tendons severed, bones broken, Life destroyed, forced to smile while my enemies thrived before me. No, I would not endure any longer. I don't understand what you're saying. It's late. I should go. Seize her. Sharon turned, panic flashing in her eyes, trying to flee the Hall of Serenity. But Lily and the guards intercepted her. Nora, I am your mother. The lawful wife of the Chancellor. Tyler and daughter of Lord Patrick. You wouldn't dare harm me. What? Will you commit matricide now? The guards gagged her before she could scream further. Your Majesty. Lily whispered anxiously, glancing at me. It's fine, I said quietly. Take her away. Lock her up. I no longer needed her confession. The truth had long been confirmed in my correspondence with my grandfather. The official reason was simple: the imperial consort had invited her mother to the palace to ease her longing for family. When Tyler heard the news, his face reportedly turned ashen. He even forced a laugh, one that looked more painful than tears. As for Sharon's warning that without the Nora family, I'd never survive in the palace, I found it rather amusing. After that incident, I knew he would not stop. For his ambitions, he would strike again and harder. Before that happened, I needed an ally. One name came to mind. Perhaps it was worth a try. So I began visiting the Golden Town Hall frequently, always under some pretext or another. That night, the stars were unusually bright. Leaving the hall, I stepped into my palanquin. Not long ago, I'd received word that Few planned to make his move tonight. How convenient. Sometimes fate truly delivered what one wished for. As we passed through the palace path, I rubbed my temples lightly, then froze. A group of men in black appeared out of the shadows. So, you are Nora, are you? The night was dark and windy. Dressed in black, holding a sharp sword, with a black cloth covering my face. Murderous intent gleamed in my eyes. I pressed a dragon and phoenix bend into Lily's hand. Lily, use the chaos to find His Majesty. The assassins clashed with the palace guards, and one by one, lone attackers rushed toward me. Without hesitation, I turned and sprinted toward Jianquan Palace. The cold wind sliced through my face like a sharp blade, sending a sting of pain. The assassins behind me, like vengeful ghosts, pursued relentlessly. But in my mind, images from my past life flickered like a lantern. No matter what, I would not repeat the same mistakes. Even if Eric didn't come, I had other ways to escape. I would not die so easily. Before long, a flash of fire appeared in the distance, followed by a figure dressed in bright yellow. Take her down. I was suddenly swept into a warm, powerful embrace, and a surge of panic hit me. But it was quickly replaced by a sense of safety. The lump formed in my throat, and my eyes blurred with tears. Your Majesty, I whispered. I'm here. That night, seeing that the situation was hopeless, having fulfilled hopeless, the assassins poisoned themselves, and none survived. Eric ordered an investigation, but there were no leads. Aren't you going to explain this to me? His voice was cold. Nora. Eric placed the dragon and phoenix pendant before my eyes, his brow furrowing. I took the pendant back, holding it gently. May I have some time? Your Majesty? I asked softly. I do not like that form of address. I froze. Surprised, he continued, his voice firm. While you're in the palace, you should address yourself as this servant. Be careful not to make any mistakes. I nodded quietly, but inside, doubts began to stir. He stared at me for a long while. Then spoke, his tone heavy with meaning. Once you've made up your mind, come find me. After discussing with my grandfather for a long time, I carried a food box and made my way toward the Jinluan Hall. I placed a plate of pastries on the dragon-shaped writing desk and met the gaze of the person buried in his official documents. His brows were sharp, arching upward. A high nose, thin lips, and deep, dark eyes. His face bore a gentle smile, warm yet commanding. His presence captivating. I couldn't help but wonder if Sylvia had lost her mind. How could such a remarkable man have been overlooked by her? Have you thought this through? His voice was calm but firm. The day I sought help with the jade pendant had been the moment my identity was exposed. but I had asked for some time to handle things. After explaining the situation, I smiled at him. Your Majesty's strategies are brilliant. And this humble servant? I was interrupted by Eric, but my smile only deepened. I am honored to receive your Majesty's favor and protection. His lips curved into a slight smile. Leisurely and subtle. You made these yourself? He picked up a pastry and tasted it. You've certainly improved since childhood. I untied the dragon and phoenix pendant from my waist and held it out in the palm of my hand. Compared to the one you gave me, it's nothing. Eric said nothing. But soon his hand held the other half of the dragon and phoenix pendant. Eric and I had known each other since childhood, though we had only spent a few days together. Back then, he was still a prince, and King had yet to adopt him in place of the late emperor. During the flower festival that year, I secretly left my home to help Hugh win a lantern competition. On my way back, I encountered Derek, who had sneaked out of the palace and was being chased. Seeing his plight, I secretly took him to the Tyler family estate. At that time, I never would have imagined that the ragged, dirt-streaked Derek would one day become the emperor reigning over thousands. Of course, I couldn't connect the man he had become with the boy he once was. Life at the Tyler family estate wasn't easy. And with Eric there, food became scarce. I often had to make extra meals that were difficult to swallow. He once joked, I'll either be killed by an assassin or poisoned by you. This is the worst thing I've ever eaten. He'd complain, but he still finished every bite. After I hid him for a few days, his secret guards found him. Before he left, he asked for my name and gave me half of the dragon and phoenix pendant. Wait for me, he said. At the time, I thought it was just a joke. Later, when he ascended the throne, he issued a decree calling for the eldest daughter of the Nora family to enter the palace. But I was focused entirely on Hugh. And when Sylvia came to ask for help, I immediately agreed to let her enter the palace. After being imprisoned, when I tried to find Eric again, I heard Hugh say that His Majesty had become melancholic, poisoned with a strange toxin, and had little time left. King had taken control of the entire palace. At 23, Eric died before me. Some mistakes should have been corrected sooner, returning to the right path. To form an alliance with Eric. My grandfather handed over all his wealth to Eric, to fill the royal treasury. Eric had intended to offer my grandfather a position, but my grandfather had made certain demands. Eric agreed and gave him a position as a royal merchant. But knowing my grandfather, I was certain the demands couldn't have been so simple. Yet, neither man was willing to tell me. Sharon had been locked up in Changshi Palace for more than half a month and was drugged. Lily told me Sharon was on the verge of madness. Out of mercy, I sent her back to the Tyler family estate. However, when Sharon returned, she was accompanied not just by herself, but by a letter severing family ties and 10 bloody fingernails. I wasn't worried about her speaking out. After all, a mute could not speak. Moreover, she wouldn't live much longer. Recently, a new play had taken the city by storm. A general fell in love with a woman at first sight and took her as his wife. However, just a month after the marriage, the general received an imperial order to go to the frontier to fight off enemies, forcing the lovers to part. Surprisingly, the general never lost a battle in the field. Less than 2 years later, he returned victorious. Not long after, a Fort Unchelet predicted that the general's wife was a blessing to the kingdom. Soon, let out a low sigh. The emperor's only son led a rebellion, and the general protected the emperor. As a result, the general's fame soared, and the people rallied behind him. Eventually, the emperor abdicated in favor of the general. Who would have thought that the dynasty would prosper for nearly a century? This story quickly spread, and the people began drawing comparisons between the current emperor, Hugh, and his wife, Sylvia. Hugh and Sylvia's reputation skyrocketed in the hearts of the people. Eventually, some even dared to speculate if the next emperor might be Hugh, as Eric had no heirs. At first, Hugh had been pleased. But when he learned how the public opinion had shifted, he was frightened and took several days off from court. I heard that even King had become restless. The most serious incident was when a minister submitted a memorial about the matter. This was truly killing two birds with one stone. Did His Majesty do this? I smiled sweetly at him. His long finger traced the bridge of my nose. His voice lazy with amusement. Just giving you some entertainment. There's nothing amusing about it. You'd be better off making Hugh and his wife the main characters. He feigned anger. And then, as if venting, he pinched my face hard. It hurts. Good. It's to teach you a lesson. Now that you are the imperial consort, Hugh's sister-in-law, the only one who can bear the public opinion alongside you is none other than I, Eric said. His tone matter of fact. I couldn't help but roll my eyes. It was just like when we were children. Then what does your Majesty intend to do? Strike while the iron is hot. He replied with a cold smile. Before I knew it, the Mid-Autumn Festival had arrived. Eric had been on the throne for 5 years now, having ascended at 16. Yet still had not taken a consort. Naturally, hadn't fulfilled my obsession. I became the one who could stand beside him. I imagined Sylvia. To have reached this position must be quite the strategist. The banquet was full of lively music and the sound of dancing, filling the hall with warmth and light. It was the first time I'd seen Sylvia and Hugh since that last encounter. Once the dancers had left the stage, a few ministers, unable to contain themselves, took the opportunity to speak to Eric. Of course, Eric would not give Hugh a chance to act humble. What does Hugh think of this matter? I swear, Your Majesty, I will follow you to the death, with no second thoughts. Hugh replied. He was straightforward, kneeling to show his loyalty. But was he really in trouble? Several ministers stood up, one after another. Now that Hugh commands the military, whether or not he has divided loyalties, only he truly knows. What nonsense. We all know Hugh's loyalty. Why else would His Majesty trust him with the army? That's right. Hugh's name is known far and wide. The people say that without Hugh, our great Chu wouldn't have such good fortune. Of course, he deserves the military power. Hugh has many accomplishments, far beyond any of us. Hugh was raised to unimaginable heights. His achievements extolled in the highest terms. It almost felt as if the emperor himself were beneath him. Hugh's face turned pale as he realized what was happening. He must have known. A man with too many achievements could never end well. But did he truly deserve all this praise? Only Hugh himself could answer that. The atmosphere in the banquet hall grew tense. But through it all, one pair of eyes remained fixed on Hugh, cold, calculating. I thought. Perhaps. His mind could only hear two words, military power. After all, he was a fool. As I had predicted, Hugh wasn't able to resist. I am honored to serve His Majesty, Hugh said, bowing low. To prove my loyalty, I am willing to surrender all the military power of the Hugh family. I hope Your Majesty will accept it. Eric and I exchanged a glance, our lips curling in amusement. Before Hugh could react, Eric reluctantly accepted the offer. Now, when Hugh realized it was all a trap, it would be too late for regret. All that awaited him were king's reprimands and countless sleepless nights filled with remorse. But when I saw Sylvia's expression, more bitter than Hugh's, I couldn't help but look forward to the next move. The banquet had just ended when Eric rushed to the Changshi Palace. He had been coming frequently these days, though he never stayed overnight. It wasn't that he didn't want to, but rather, I refused. The thought of it always brought back memories of the things I had endured before my death. I was deeply resistant, though I knew he wasn't that kind of person. I won't bite you. Come here, Eric said, patting a small space beside him. He seemed unable to wait any longer and simply pulled me onto his lap. Before I could say anything, he placed something in my hand. It was half of the Hugh family's tiger seal. This was the first time since my rebirth that I had been truly shocked. What does His Majesty mean by this? 1/2 for you, 1/2 for me, he replied casually, as though it were trivial. I took it from him and gave it to you. Maybe this will make you happy. Besides, if you're going to be the empress, you can't be without some bargaining chips. He leaned in closer, whispering in my ear, this is a secret gift from me to you. Don't let those ministers hear about it, or they'll never stop pestering me. His long fingers pinched my cheek. "Don't worry. If you don't want it, I won't force you." Looking at his retreating figure, I couldn't help but smile bitterly. Do all emperors think they can decide everything for others? Who said I wanted to be his empress? Before my death, Sylvia told me many things. Most often, she boasted about how Hugh treated her so well, looking at the sea of kneeling concubines. If the truth hadn't been staring me in the face, I wouldn't have believed Sylvia could be such a person. Moreover, Sylvia was now pregnant. Did His Majesty know about this all along? Eric nodded silently. I couldn't help but sigh. Yet, I was curious. Now that Hugh knew the truth, could he still remain with Sylvia until the end? Hugh had several of Eric's spies around him, so spreading rumors was easy. But it would cost me. I heard that just before the news reached Hugh, he had been holding Sylvia in his arms. Their love was still fresh. The loyal servants who went to report to him couldn't hide their frowns. When they exited the courtyard and delivered their report, Hugh's frown mirrored theirs. The whole situation was somewhat comical. But what was it really about? It was about how the imperial consort had secretly kept a young lover at Changshi Palace years ago. Others might not know that the current imperial consort was a different person from the one in the past. But surely Hugh and his servants knew. He hadn't believed it. And I wasn't in a hurry either. After all, this was just part of the game. Not long after, as though the drama had been written in a script, the Koguro tribe from the north repeatedly attacked the borders of Great Shu. Hugh had been lectured by the king for who knows how long. Desperate to prove his worth, so he eagerly offered to lead the army against Koguro. But on the eve of departure, Hugh caught Sylvia secretly meeting with her lover. At that moment, Hugh's face was priceless. Unfortunately, I wasn't there to witness it. Hugh even threatened to send Sylvia back to the palace. It was enough to make me gasp. Who gave him the audacity to think he could do such a thing? The entire night was filled with the cries and shouts of the Hugh family. Now, only Sylvia remained in the capital. But I had to admit they were alike. Arrogant, self-righteous, and proud. Now, the only person Sylvia could rely on was Hugh. And I heard that pregnant women were prone to unstable emotions and paranoia. So Sylvia found a hidden chamber in Hugh's study. One filled with my portraits. Later, I heard she mysteriously vanished. As for the portraits, I had them discreetly retrieved. After all, they were painted by Eric. I made an excuse to admire them. But in truth, I was using them to provoke Hugh. I ordered that no one speak of it. For if Eric found out, he would surely have another tantrum. As everyone awaited Hugh's triumphant return, ministers in the court quietly maneuvered, along with the imperial bards and some minor officials, all undergoing a major reshuffle. King's pawns had been consumed countless turns. But at the same time, I too was planning my next move. However, Hugh's army was ambushed. As the people grew worried, Hugh sneakily returned to the capital, and Sylvia was with him. Hugh had fled from the battlefield. In my past life, Hugh had made the same choice. But that battle had been won, all thanks to one of his subordinates, a man named Ryan. Yet afterward, Ryan received no reward. Instead, Hugh framed him with a false charge, making him my neighbor. But not long after, Ryan died in prison. All the military honors went to Hugh. A true general must first discipline the heart. Hugh had voluntarily offered his service. But now, in a moment of fear, he abandoned his armor, running away with Sylvia, who had snuck off to the border with him, abandoning the lives of the entire army. In truth, it was Sylvia who had, while Hugh was injured and unconscious, secretly brought him back. A general's incompetence had led to the army's downfall. Fortunately, having fulfilled my before they set out, I had secretly summoned Ryan into the palace and given him instructions. Eric had even issued him a secret decree. Hugh had returned to the capital less than a day, and already the city was in uproar. The next day, ministers from all factions denounced him, and Eric immediately issued an order to imprison Hugh. Who would have thought that Hugh's father would kneel outside the imperial study for an entire day, offering the military achievements earned over a lifetime to save Hugh? Hugh's father had only one son, Hugh, and he was a useless one. In the end, Eric granted Hugh 50 lashes. And whether he survived or not would depend on him. Afterward, Hugh's entire family was exiled. On the day of the punishment, I made a special trip to watch, standing far on the city tower. But fearing that Hugh might not see me, I changed into a rose-colored, intricately patterned gown that trailed like a phoenix's tail, with 12 golden hairpins adorning my head more extravagant than ever. His eyes were sharp enough to catch sight of me immediately from below. And after that first glance, he kept his gaze fixed on me. I had an idea. I turned to Lily and said, "Are the people below slacking off? Tell them to hit harder." With the new orders, the blows became even fiercer. Hugh's face twisted in pain. "Are you that happy?" At these words, someone had already appeared by my side. "Naturally. It's only fair to settle an old score." "I'm curious. Why do you hate him so much?" I turned to look at him and asked, "And you, Your Majesty? Why did you say you hated him that night?" He looked at me. His gaze heated. For some reason, my heart suddenly began to race. "Because the person I have feelings for is you. So I'm jealous of him. I'm jealous that he once had you. That he once held a place in your heart. But I hate him even more for how he hurt you. Nora, stay and be my empress. Will you?" His warm hand gently caressed my face. I felt as if I were entranced. And I nodded. Yes. He kissed me carefully on the lips, his hands holding me tightly against him. Warm. Soft. He lifted me up and carried me back toward the Jinluan Hall. "Your Majesty. You can't do such things in the daylight. Then I'll be a foolish emperor for once." As we left, I saw Hugh's wounded gaze fixated on me. All I felt was wild confusion. Though Hugh did not die, he was far from well. But because of the severity of his injuries, his exile would have to wait until Hugh could move again. From what I knew of him, having once climbed his way to King's side, Hugh would never give up easily. But he seemed to have fallen under some curse. After returning, he fell into a coma, plagued by nightmares every night, muttering nonsense. I found it a little pitiful. There was no more excitement to watch. I had been wondering how he would deal with Sylvia. But I wasn't idle either. The palace had already begun preparations for my coronation as empress. That day, the palace officials came to report the details of the ceremony when two unexpected guests arrived. Upon seeing me, Sylvia immediately knelt and cried like a broken-hearted mess. Tyler, standing by her side, looked a bit helpless. "Sister, I know I was wrong. I shouldn't have meddled between you and brother-in-law." I couldn't help but rub my temples. Thankfully, the palace maids had already been dismissed. Although Eric had said that the coronation would make my position official, it was still better to avoid unnecessary trouble. I turned my head, and she crawled toward me, clutching my gown. "Sister, I know I was wrong. I'm willing to leave brother-in-law and return to the palace. Brother-in-law suffers from nightmares every day, and he murmurs your name. This shows how sincere he is to you. Please, sister, give me a chance to atone for my wrongs. Save me, please." I didn't want to pay her any attention, but her words were simply ridiculous. I pulled my gown away from her tight grip. It seems that Tyler really has nothing better to do. Bringing a stray cat and dog to cause a scene in my Changshi palace. Tyler's face darkened. "Nora, I've wronged you and your mother. I know I was wrong. I've demoted Sharon to a concubine. My Nora family's matriarch will always be your mother." This was the first time I had heard Tyler mention my mother in both of my lifetimes. After being reborn, my grandfather often spoke to me about my mother. In my grandfather's words, she seemed like a living person, optimistic, lively, especially talented in business. Sadly, she had given everything up for a heartless man. I thought, even though she was no longer here, she should at least be free now. All I could do was stop these people from continuing to cling to her. "I have already severed ties with your Tyler family. My mother would never covet the position of matriarch," Hugh offered. "If you have any sense, you'll issue a divorce decree. Otherwise, with all the vile things you've done, Tyler, the only thing you can expect is exile." Tyler's face stiffened. And I believed he had heard my words. Not long ago, I had sent people to investigate Tyler, and found that his dirty dealings were numerous. If he were wise and chose the divorce, he might still have a chance for a better future. I looked down at Sylvia with cold eyes. You and Hugh, since you picked him out from all those suitors, should live a good life together, Eric said. Sylvia tried to plead with me again, but Lily had her thrown out of Changshi Palace. Tyler, sensing the situation, left with her. Not long after, Eric issued an edict to exile the Nora family from the capital, forbidding them from entering without summons. Before leaving the city, Sharon died. I mentioned to Eric the idea of sending the Nora family to the barbaric lands. Upon reflection, it seemed no different from exile. Moreover, Hugh had woken up. But his condition was far from what it once was, for he had been poisoned slowly during his coma. Sylvia didn't fare much better. The Hugh family was soon on their way to exile. Hugh had been behaving himself along the way. I had expected him to die from the poison. But just days later, a guard sent to watch over the exiles was found dead on the road. Then, whatever will say, Hugh and Sylvia mysteriously disappeared. Before long, it was reported that Hugh had gone to see the king in secret, gathering an army to prepare for rebellion. As expected, he couldn't stay calm for long. In the last life, at this time, the king had already begun making plans to poison Eric. Eric's health quickly deteriorated within 3 months, and he passed away not long after. In that life, the king didn't stage a coup, nor did Hugh lead an army to storm the palace. They merely waited for Eric's death, and the king ascended the throne the very next day, his path clear. Eric had been the weakness. And that was the third step in the game Eric and I had set together. Unfortunately, hadn't fulfilledly. Because of this move, my coronation as empress would have to be postponed. Life continued as usual. I proceeded with my plans, preparing everything as discussed. I handed the palace defense map that Eric gave me over to Ryan. Eric had secretly been in contact with his loyal subjects while pretending to be poised and in front of others. Hugh had been placed by the king in a residence to recover from his injuries, while Sylvia cried daily, tortured by Hugh. Within a month, rumors spread that Eric had been vomiting blood. Soon, 3 months passed. That night, I sent a message to Hugh, who was stationed at the city's outskirts. At the stroke of midnight, the imperial consort will go to the Tyler family's summer lotus courtyard. Catch the king first. If we can't capture the king, the general will suffice. Hugh and I had many happy memories. Though, at the stroke of midnight, I arrived at the summer lotus courtyard of the Tyler family, where Hugh had already arrived. He had lost much weight. His eyes sunken. No longer the proud figure he once was. Instead, there was only a deep sense of weariness. What are you doing here? I feigned confusion. It's been a long time since I've been here. He gazed at the lush phoenix tree, but didn't answer me. In our childhood, we often leaned against that berry tree, sitting for hours, lost in conversation. I remember one time I arrived late, couldn't find you anywhere, and finally realized you were hiding in the tree. He looked up at the tree with a nostalgic glint in his eye. When you came down, you fell and cried like a baby. I spent so long comforting you after that. I said nothing, but turned to leave, only for him to stop me. Nora, I was wrong about you. He looked at me with a hint of guilt in his eyes, his voice softer. It was Sylvia. She lied to me, saying the person that night was her. So I believed her. Later, Sharon even told me that it was you who forced Sylvia to enter the palace and sleep with the emperor. I trusted you. But Sylvia kept telling me how abandoned and neglected she was in the palace. I lost my head for a moment, and his explanation no longer mattered to me. And I didn't want to hear it. Sylvia said it was her that night. And though there was no evidence, Hugh never questioned it. Besides, he had already done what he shouldn't have. You lost your mind and ended up in Sylvia's bed. Do you believe that yourself? I said coldly, fixing him with a hard stare. Whether this game ends with one person being sacrificed or not, the decision is in your hands. But you wavered because of a few whispered words from Sylvia. Didn't you? And I, for the sake of both our family's safety, concerned for your future, allowed myself to be torn apart. ruined in reputation, and cast aside. Even my closest ones were killed by you. Nora. I've had enough of your noble-sounding words. A gentle breeze stirred, and a sudden chill brushed my face. Hugh suddenly smiled. I know you hate Sylvia. She's locked in the dungeon now. Completely insane. I'd used the same method she tortured you with on her. I will make her suffer more than death. If you're still not satisfied, I can kill her myself. Or let you do it. Shut up. I didn't want to hear another word from him. This was his great love. Yet her life and death were so casually spoken of by him. But what happened to Sylvia was her own retribution, and had nothing to do with me. Hugh. I've always hated you. Hugh's eyes dark, and once more. You're waiting, aren't you? At the hour of yin? The yin hour had been the time Eric passed away in my previous life. You have no one but Eric now. He's dying. And you still want to wait for him? Once he dies, there's no one left who can sit on the throne except the king. I won last time. And I will win again this time. Hugh suddenly grabbed my hand, near mad with desperation. Nora. I don't care about what happened between you and Eric. If you'll forgive me. If you'll come back to me. But I don't want to. I pulled my hand away, calmly staring at him, frozen in place. I suddenly smiled, gently resting my hand on my abdomen. Besides, I'm already carrying the Emperor's child. If Eric dies, then the throne will never belong to the king. Hugh was stunned, but he still reached out to grab me again. I took a step back. Don't touch me. I find you disgusting. Hugh sneered. What does it matter that you carry a child? A bowl of miscarriage medicine and we can start over. He stepped forward to grab my hand, but was immediately surrounded by dozens of guards. There was a flicker of disappointment in his eyes. Are you plotting against me? Nora. Do you think a few guards can trap me? He yanked me into his embrace. A cold, sharp blade pressed to my neck. He whispered into my ear, his tone filled with greed. Nora. The Emperor will die tonight. You'll be all alone, with no one to turn to. You have no choice but me. I tight, and my sleeves. Who said she is helpless? Looking up, Eric, dressed in dark robes, stood like a towering figure before me. I felt the person behind me stiffen, and without hesitation, I drove the dagger into his chest. Bright red blood splashed out, staining my pale yellow dress. A flash of pain crossed Hugh's eyes as he collapsed to the ground, his face contorting in confusion and surprise. How is this possible? My gaze was cold, my voice devoid of any emotion. Why is it impossible? Nearly half of your trusted men are ones I've placed there. Even your Hugh family's army is now mine. Hugh. This battle is yours to lose. Hugh was convinced that I had no idea how they had poisoned Eric, even more so that I was unaware of the type of poison used. But what they didn't know was that, before I died in my past life, Sylvia, that fool, had revealed everything to me, bragging about how impenetrable their plan was. Her pride became her downfall. Hugh, at least, had come full circle. But they would never know that ever since Eric and I had joined forces, Eric had been consistently checking his pulse. Twice a day. Even his meals were examined by the imperial physician before he could eat them. Why? Are you asking why I didn't wait to die in the palace but instead appeared here, unharmed? Eric's hand mischievously wrapped around my waist. Because I pity the one before me. Take him away and lock him in the dungeon. Until the bell tolled. King never saw Hugh again. But by this point, he had no choice but to fight. King laid his army straight into the palace. But there were hardly any people on the palace path. When he finally reached the Jinluan Hall, he realized he had fallen into a trap, for inside the hall was only Ryan, disguised as Eric. Within moments, King was captured. King and his followers were sentenced to death, including Hugh. He wanted to see me one last time before he died. But I refused. As for Sylvia, after being rescued, she was imprisoned in the cold palace under the title of a noble concubine. Afterward, I became the empress of the Great Chu. After the coronation ceremony, I went to see her. Sylvia was now unkempt, hugging a pillow and muttering to herself. I remembered how Just before my death in the past, she had been adorned in luxurious clothes and jewelry. Now, it seemed that this was a full circle. However, I didn't believe that someone with her cunning would simply go mad so easily. I was right. I once thought, by entering the palace and becoming the most beloved concubine, I could be supreme, but I never expected His Majesty never to call for me. The favor I received was only because I resembled you. I stole your husband, thinking I could win your true love, but in the end, I ended up like this. Nora, I've been adored since childhood, surrounded by stars. I don't understand. Why did I lose to you? She spoke as if to herself, then lowered her head, gently soothing the child in her arms. I finally understood. I said nothing and turned to leave. Behind me, Sylvia was executed by hanging. As I left the cold palace, a gentle breeze swept through. I felt a great sense of relief. After becoming the empress, my grandfather transferred all his shops to me. He, on the other hand, set off to travel the seas. That night, Eric was completely drunk, lying in my arms, sobbing like the puppy I had raised as a child. Thankfully, Nora didn't end up as unfortunate as in the dream. I promised your grandfather I would treat Nora well, and I haven't broken that promise. I froze for a moment. Had he also dreamed of the past life? Before I could think further, the person in my arms stirred. He pulled me closer and kissed me relentlessly. Well, I would cherish the person before me. On the eve of the wedding, Maxim started an affair with my stepsister, who had come to be my bridesmaid. My stepsister had just broken up with her boyfriend and came to me for comfort. That's when Maxim saw her. It was love at first sight for them both. I still meticulously prepared for the wedding, invited guests, and acted as if I knew nothing. On the wedding day, my stepsister put on the wedding dress I had prepared and confronted me. Maxim stood beside her, gazing at me with affectionate eyes. I gave you my youth and the rest of my life. So this time, I want to leave the wedding to her. I silently clenched the diagnosis in my hand, hesitated for a moment, and then yielded the wedding to them. No one knew that Maxim was dying. When Maxim and my stepsister Leela emerged from the hotel again, I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe the man who had loved me until the end with his brief remaining time in our past life could fall out of love. So I got out of the car and appeared before them. A man stiffened instantly at the sight of me, then stepped forward to pull me into his arms. It's so cold, why didn't you wear more clothes? I stared at the Maxim in front of me for a long time. In his eyes, I could still see the deep affection he had for me. Yet this same lover, who had once been filled with nothing but me, had been caught by me at the hotel entrance 3 times. I steadied the bitterness in my heart and spoke calmly. Someone told me they saw you enter the hotel with a girl. So I rushed over worried. Maxim chuckled softly, nuzzling his nose against my cheek. Elisa, don't you know how much I love you? Don't doubt me like this, it hurts. A flash of jealousy crossed Leela's eyes as she stood beside us, quickly replaced by a sweet smile. Brother Maxim, I never knew you could be so clingy. Sister, don't worry. If even Brother Maxim could cheat on you, there would be no good man left in the world. Though spoken to me, Leela's gaze remained fixed on Maxim. The man's face cooled, his eyes narrowing in warning. Seeing I didn't press further, Maxim took the initiative to explain. Leela is about to graduate and look for a job, so she asked me to teach her some interview processes and skills. Couldn't you do that at home? Maxim took off his coat and draped it over me, then held my icy hands in his, rubbing them gently. You've been busy with wedding plans recently, and I wanted you to sleep more, so I chose a quiet hotel. After a pause, he added, she's your sister, I have to take care of her. But he seemed to forget, Leela wasn't my biological sister. She was the stepsister who had stolen my father's love and my room since childhood, the one I despised. I forced a smile, pretending to believe his story, and didn't press further. When getting into the car, Leela, whether intentionally or not, opened the front passenger door before me. But before she could sit down, Maxim yanked her away. This seat is always Elisa's. Don't make me say it twice. Leela looked as pure as a little white rabbit, with eyes that seemed to speak. She stood by the car door, crying like a delicate flower. Enough to make any man feel sorry for her. Maxim was no exception. I clearly saw a flicker of pity in his eyes. My heart was already numb with pain. Since he had already been stolen away, there was really no need to reserve a seat for me anymore. Let her sit in front. I'll take the back. But Leela just glared at Maxim petulantly before running to the back seat. Maxim ignored her and helped me into the front passenger seat as usual. He stepped on the gas, and the car drove away without hesitation. But since I got in, even Maxim himself might not have realized, he didn't say another word to me. I stared out the window, my vision blurring as the oppressive atmosphere made it hard to breathe. I couldn't stand being alone with him for another second. Stop up ahead. I'm meeting a friend to go shopping. Maxim's expression paused, but the coldness on his face faded slightly. He gently urged me to come home early and call him after shopping so he could pick me up. I nodded obediently and turned toward the mall. After Maxim left, my laden footsteps finally stopped. I turned around. For a long time, I trembled and covered my eyes with both hands. Tears flowed through the gaps in my palms. Because I saw that at the intersection ahead, a sleek black car suddenly turned around and sped back. He had gone back to her. I didn't go home but wandered aimlessly alone. The biting cold wind seeped through my clothes. As I had told Maxim, I shopped at the mall, watched a movie, and even had winter hot pot alone. But by 10 p.m., Maxim still hadn't contacted me. Wandering, I unknowingly returned to the hotel entrance. A man and a woman were arguing and pulling at each other by the door. I glanced over and froze, for they were all too familiar to me. Leela was dragging Maxim's arm, trying to pull him into the hotel. Maxim seemed reluctant but still shuffled forward step by step. I didn't know why I hid, but my body reacted before my mind did. I flusteredly hid behind a car and heard their conversation. Maxim, be a man and come back to the hotel with me. I don't want your half-hearted apologies. What? Are you too chicken to do it? Maxim's eyes darkened. After staring at her for a few seconds, he swallowed hard and finally shook his head. Elisa is waiting for me at home. I have to go back to her. But Leela didn't let him finish. She suddenly stood on tiptoe and kissed him without warning. Maxim's hands immediately clasped around the woman's soft waist, urgent and rough. They were completely oblivious to the world around them. I turned away, unable to watch anymore. After an unknown time, they finally pulled apart, and I could still hear their ragged breathing. Will you come in with me now? Leela's weak voice held a seductive lure. I didn't hear what Maxim said, but my phone suddenly pinged with a message from Maxim. Elisa, are you home? I have to go on a business trip for a few days, and am already on my way to the airport. I can't pick you up. So he still remembered his promise to pick me up. In the past, I would have gently reminded him to take care of himself. But today, I wanted to see, would Maxim, who had loved me for 2 lifetimes, abandon me for a Leela he had known for only a few days? I replied, if you don't come pick me up this turn, I won't go home. Maxim almost instantly pulled his hand away from Leela's waist and turned toward the car, his steps urgent. Leela panicked and blocked his path, tearfully refusing to let him leave. All the desire in the man's eyes vanished, replaced by a cold stare. He snapped, move. I need to pick her up. Leela tried to throw her arms around Maxim's neck again, but he pushed her away coldly. Leela refused to give up. She had finally gotten close to a wealthy heir like Maxim. She clung to his waist, pressing herself against him and whining softly. What's so good about Elisa? She's not pretty. And she's not as adventurous as me. Aren't you tired of being with her after all these years? Maxim, don't marry her. Okay? When Maxim stayed silent, Leela grew bolder, whispering tentatively. Actually, Mom has already found a marriage partner for Elisa. He's over 10 years older, but knows how to take care of people more than enough for an ordinary woman like Elisa. Should I ask Mom to introduce them someday? Maxim still didn't respond, and this silence made Leela think he didn't care much for me. But I knew this was Maxim's way of being furiously angry. Men like him, raised in luxury, always acted polite and gentle. But when he went expressionless, it meant someone had crossed his bottom line. Sure enough, Maxim roughly grabbed Leela's chin the next second, snorting with a fierce glint in his eye. I almost forgot you're just a stepsister with no blood relation. And you're nothing but cheap. The only thing you're good for is bad. In my eyes. You aren't even worth a hair of hers. If I hear another word, get out. Leela thought she had grown close to Maxim, never expecting him to turn on her so suddenly. She shrank back in fear, nodding quickly with red eyes. I watched the two people who had been entangled in an argument for over 10 minutes since I messaged Maxim. Suddenly, I no longer wanted that answer. Even if Maxim really came to pick me up, I couldn't be sure if he was still the same Maxim who loved me unconditionally in my past life. So, I unlocked my phone and typed, "Just kidding. I've already gone home. Have a good trip." My phone dinged. Maxim glanced down, then softened his icy demeanor. He gently tilted Leela's bruised chin and asked softly, "Does it hurt?" Tears instantly rolled down Leela's cheeks, making her look pitiful in the cold wind. Maxim stared at her for a long moment, then slowly wiped away her tears and cooed at her until she smiled through her sobs. Then, let out a low sigh. Under my calm gaze, Maxim picked Leela up in his arms. The woman shyly buried her face in his chest. This time, their closeness didn't stir a single ripple in me. When sorrow reaches its peak, there's no more pain left to feel. I was just confused. Could the Maxim who'd whispered my name until his last breath in our past life really have changed? We'd been lovers then, torn apart by misunderstandings, and never reunited. Later, I followed the usual path: blind dates, marriage, children. A simple life of daily chores. Just like anyone else. But Maxim died the year I got married. Years later, after my divorce, someone sent me a box full of love letters, all written by Maxim in his final days. He said if I was happy, I should burn them. The messenger also told me my name had been on his lips until the end. Every letter ended with, "Never show up in front of me again. If there's a next life. Elisa, will you wait for me? Wait until I find you. Let's not part in our next life, okay?" So I was reborn with memories, determined not to let go of his hand this time. We'd survived the misunderstanding that tore us apart in the past, but I thought our ending would be different. Yet he'd forgotten his promises, drifting further away. I'm the only one still holding on to the vows we made. It's so tiring. I wiped away tears already dried by the wind and looked back at their vanished figures. Maxim returned 3 days later, carrying a suitcase and looking travel-worn. But that night, I'd already asked Leela, and she'd also been away for 3 days. Funny how they both claimed to be on business trips. "Where are you? If something happens to you, I can't explain to Dad." Leela sent me a garbled voice message. Hard to make out. My ex-boyfriend wants to get back together. I'd been with him these days. I stared at the message for a long time, too afraid to play it again. I couldn't imagine how Maxim felt beside her. Maxim dropped his suitcase and pulled me tightly into his arms. Inhaling deeply, he murmured contentedly, "These 3 days felt like an eternity. I wanted to fly back to you the second I left. Elisa, you're my cure. Just seeing you makes all my tiredness fade." I let him hold me, but my gaze fell on a long blonde hair on his coat. I laughed bitterly inside. So Maxim was no different from other cheating men. Leela entered minutes after him. Seeing us embrace, she gave me a smug smile like clear mockery. I gently pushed Maxim away, not returning his warm smile as usual. I wasn't angry, just calm when I said, "I need to pick up my medical report from the hospital. I'm leaving." Maxim reached for me but missed, looking confused. As I passed Leela, I smelt the same perfume on her as on Maxim. A wave of nausea brought tears to my eyes, and I walked out without looking back. Behind me, Maxim noticed my reaction and stared at my back, his eyes flickering with pain and regret. But what's the use of regret after the fact? Holding the pre-emerita medical report, I stood stunned for a long time. It was as if everything was following the same path as my past life, unchangeable. Though we'd avoided the breakup crisis, new cracks had formed, and this Maxim, like the one before, was dying. Looking up, I saw Maxim stepping out of a car ahead. I quickly stuffed the report into my pocket. He immediately took my hand. Eyes full of worry. What's wrong? Is something happening? Looking at him, I felt no hatred left. I shook my head, voice softening involuntarily as I asked seriously. Maxim, what's your biggest wish in life? He flicked my nose playfully. Doting. Simple. I want to marry you. Tilting his head, he teased. Elisa, you're not backing out. Are you? I shook my head firmly. No, I won't. If this is your biggest wish, I'll make sure it comes true. On the day we were to register our marriage at the civil office, Maxim stood me up. He used the business trip excuse again to fool around with Leela. This time, he took her on a 3-day cruise party with friends info leaked by my friend who worked as a cruise server. Maxim had once fought with these friends because of me. Shortly after we started dating, he took me to their usual club, while he chatted with acquaintances. One of his friends pulled me into a private room. Maxim had searched for me like a madman. And after holding my trembling self, he cut ties with all those friends. Later, they all apologized, admitting they thought I was just another one of his flings. That day was my first glimpse into Maxim's hidden life. But Leela was different. She thrived on excitement and chaos. A perfect match for Maxim's preemie lifestyle. My phone received a video. Maxim sat in the host's seat, Leela in his arms, swirling a wine glass. A friend joked. Maxim, you finally got tired of Elisa. Welcome back to the pack. Yeah, Elisa. This new girl's way better than Elisa. Maxim smiled, but the next second, he smashed his wine glass on the floor. One glare from him turned everyone pale. Elisa is not like those other women. She's going to be my wife. Your sister-in-law. Watch your mouths. I exited the video before it ended. Today, I'd waited from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. All I got was a short message, baby. Let's register after the wedding. I have an urgent business trip. With a pleading emoji. I looked up at the civil office entrance, where couples streamed past me. Alone, I waited, eventually, heading to filled my obsession. I replied with a single word, okay. Turning to leave, I realized I'd taken countless steps toward him in this life. The last step shouldn't be mine to take. When Maxim returned, he seemed different, like the man before Leela's arrival, focusing all his attention on me again. He noticed my changed attitude. In the past, I'd leave the bedside lamp on when he worked late. Now, he often found me asleep with my back to him. That alone wouldn't worry him. But he also realized I'd stopped letting him touch me since his affair with Leela. Maxim was terrified, afraid I'd discover the truth. More afraid of losing my trust. So without asking, he dragged me to the civil office early the next day. Standing there again felt absurd. He held my hand. Eyes hopeful. Let's register first, then have the wedding. But this time, I didn't get out of the car. I forgot my ID. Let's focus on the wedding first. Maxim looked hurt, begging to go back for it. I shook off his hand. Annoyed. One more word, and we'll cancel the wedding. He fell silent, quickly driving away. In the following days, I grew busier, speaking less to Maxim. I threw myself into planning the wedding and inviting guests. Seeing my dedication, Maxim relaxed. Leela moved out of our home, shooting me a hostile glare on her way out. I guessed Maxim had kicked her out. Leela is not someone who gives up easily. Since she couldn't get through to Maxim, she should come back to me. As expected, that very night after she left, Leela sent me all their chat records and photos taken together. We're already together. He wouldn't even hold this wedding with you if he didn't cherish old memories. Elisa. Whether in the Elisa family or with Maxim, you're the redundant one. Leela tried to provoke me to stop the wedding she didn't want to see. But I, who already knew the truth, wasn't angry anymore. But even this wedding out of old memories, you don't have one. Do you? Leela laughed sarcastically, her voice full of determination and confidence. Just wait and see whose wedding this will be. The night before the wedding, my father, who had been absent for over 20 years, came. His unusually kind attitude toward me made me smell something unusual. Leela's biological mother also came. and I arranged for them to stay in my house. After all, he was my biological father. So Maxim took them out for dinner that evening. Throughout the meal, my father didn't mention me once, only talking about Leela's childhood stories. In his vivid descriptions, I remembered my miserable childhood, with only a tall attic corner and laughter floating up from downstairs. Leela, the center of these stories, blushed shyly and hid in her mother's arms. I kept my head down, silently eating the food in my bowl, not joining their families. Maxim picked up a chopstick of food for me, finally ending the topic. He casually scanned everyone at the table. I think you all forget that I'm marrying Elisa, not some Leela you keep talking about. After a long silence, my father was the first to laugh awkwardly, trying to tell stories about my childhood, but he stammered for a long time, only to realize he couldn't recall a single thing. Watching him struggle to think, a sense of loss welled up in my heart. I said to Maxim, "I'm done eating. Let's go." As we left, my father called out to me, his eyes flickering with faint apology. Finally, having so felt laid sigh, under his wife's prompting, he hesitated to speak. "Elisa, Dad has something to tell you. Stay behind." My stepmother quickly added, "Maxim, would you please send Leela off? She's going to the movies with friends." It seemed Leela had told them about her relationship with Maxim and asked them to create opportunities for her to be alone with him. In the end, I nodded at Maxim's questioning gaze. Maxim didn't hesitate and drove Leela away first. Leela was already prepared for tomorrow's wedding. At 3 a.m. The makeup artist knocked on my door, but my bedroom door was locked from the inside. When the lock finally opened, Leela was already fully prepared. She wore the wedding dress Maxim had specially customized for me from abroad. It didn't fit at the waist. Fixed with a conspicuous black clip, with exquisite makeup, Leela proudly confronted me. "You lost. I'm the heroine of today's wedding." I didn't care, giving her a sarcastic look. "Even if I don't wear a wedding dress, Maxim can only marry me." Leela wasn't provoked. Whatever she was thinking, she confidently bet against me. When the wedding party arrived, Maxim and the crowd saw two brides. At the sight of Leela in my wedding dress, Maxim's gaze was as sharp as a knife, as if he could pierce her. She trembled and took out a diagnosis from nowhere, her eyes pleading. Leela swayed on her feet, tears instantly filling her eyes. Only then did I notice Leela's face was paler than usual today. "Maxim, I'm dying. My only wish before I die is to have a wedding with you. Will you grant it?" Maxim took the paper in disbelief, his hands slightly trembling as he read it. Maxim was afraid. Was he afraid of losing her? I blinked, unable to suppress the bitterness in my heart. Maxim stared at the paper for a long time, and the room fell silent, all waiting for his decision. His groomsmen, who had a good impression of Leela, persuaded him. "Maxim, what are you waiting for? This is a matter of life and death. Elisa, why don't you persuade him? He can give you a wedding anytime. Leela is dying, don't be so selfish." At these words, most people in the room looked at me differently. It was as if I'd be a heinous sinner if I disagreed. No one wondered when my boyfriend of many years had gotten involved with Leela. Did pretending to be weak and pitiful always earn sympathy? Leela's mother wailed and nearly knelt before me. Of course, she was quickly helped up as soon as she bent down. No matter how much others criticized me, I didn't budge. I just stared at the man in front of me and asked, "Maxim, who do you choose for today's wedding?" Maxim stood silently, lips tightly pursed, as if making this decision was excruciating. Leela's shaky legs finally gave out, and she collapsed softly. Without thinking, Maxim caught her in his arms, his eyes full of distress. He looked up at me, pain in his eyes but his voice firm. "Elisa, I gave you my youth and the rest of my life. So this time, I want to lead the wedding to her." His gaze toward me was still affectionate. Cheers erupted. But I stayed calm, neither crying nor making a scene. From the moment Maxim saw Leela, I'd expected this ending. I just felt suddenly very sad. The Maxim from my past life had completely vanished from this world. Leela woke up in Maxim's arms and secretly smiled at me when no one was looking. I silently clenched the diagnosis in my hand, hesitated, and then yielded the wedding to them. Before leaving, Maxim asked me to wait for him, promising we'd get married after the wedding. I said nothing. Just handed him the diagnosis in my hand. Urged by Leela, Maxim stuffed it into his pocket without looking and rushed into the wedding car. As the procession left, I stood alone at the door and opened the plane ticket I'd booked earlier. Chuckling softly. Leela had used a fake diagnosis to cheat Maxim out of a wedding. But no one knew that Maxim was dying. With the sudden change of bride, Maxim's parents stormed out of the wedding venue in anger. Many followed them. Most who stayed were Maxim's groomsmen and Leela's maternal relatives. Even the Elisa family relatives couldn't stand it anymore, scolding my father harshly. "You mistreat your own daughter and favor this unrelated stepsister? The Elisa family has no fools like you." My father stayed silent as all the relatives left. As soon as he stepped toward the door, my stepmother pulled him back. "Today is Leela's big day, stay put." His momentary backbone vanished, and my father lowered his head again. Although sparsely attended, the wedding was spread across the internet by Leela's relatives. After landing, I saw the wedding live stream. It was grand and happy, with the warm ring exchange ceremony. It was the wedding Maxim had always wanted. I thought that even with a different bride, his wish had come true. After leaving, I blocked all contact with Maxim, so I didn't know he searched the entire city for me. After landing, I threw myself into work. I'd stayed in China to be with Maxim, but my best friend had repeatedly asked me to help manage her overseas company. After hearing about Maxim and me, she sighed deeply. "I thought everyone in the world might break up, but never you two. Men are all the same." After all, I didn't disagree. After the wedding, Maxim rushed back to find me, only to be told by my neighbor that I'd left. Maxim's eyes instantly red and he couldn't believe I'd really left him. When he chose Leela, he was certain I still cared for him and wouldn't let him down. But now, Maxim no longer had the confidence that I loved him. He hurried to our new home, just as the housekeeper was moving my things out in boxes. With trembling hands, Maxim opened the boxes, filled with my everyday items. His worst fear confirmed. He stood there like a statue. The housekeeper, who knew what Maxim had done and pitied me, gave him a cold look. She threw the envelope I'd left for Maxim at him and picked up the boxes to leave. Maxim blocked her path. "Don't throw these away, they're Elisa's things." The housekeeper turned back expressionlessly. "You've already abandoned her. Do you want these things to rot?" After the housekeeper left, Maxim suddenly laughed. He didn't know what he'd done that day, or how he'd blindly chosen Leela as his bride. But in that moment, his muddled mind cleared. The delayed pain of losing Elisa hit him like a truck. Only then did Maxim notice the letter I'd left for him. He bent down and carefully picked up the envelope. It took great effort for him to tear open the letter. There were only a few lines. "Maxim, I once saw someone who looked just like you in a dream. We were deeply in love, but in the end, I married someone else. And he died. I thought we could make up for the regrets we missed in the dream, but I was wrong. You're not him, and you can never be him. The Maxim I've always loved was the one in my dreams. Take care of yourself and don't give up." Tears poured down Maxim's face as he clutched his chest, doubled over in pain. He took a deep, shuddering breath before collapsing to the floor. Countless fragmented memories flooded his mind, flashing before his eyes in a rapid blur. When he woke up in the hospital, Maxim's parents were wiping tears in the corridor. Staring blankly out the window, he felt transported back to moments from his past life. Only this time, he was the one who'd gotten married. Maxim took out the diagnosis report Elisa had given him and saw the date, the day he'd picked her up from the hospital. He remembered her asking, "What's your biggest wish in life?" How had he replied? Maxim laughed at himself, a bitter chuckle. Elisa had tried so hard to reach him, step by step, but he'd only stepped back. He'd even cheated with someone like Leela. He realized that by the end of his life, he'd have no right to say he loved her. Maxim gave up on treatment, calmly awaiting the day of his death. His parents pleaded with him through tears, but he wouldn't budge. When Leela heard Maxim was dying, she showed up with thugs to claim his inheritance. Leela had a wedding with your son. She deserves half of Maxim's assets. His parents, always dignified, were speechless against such brazen greed. The corridor fell silent as Maxim pushed open the door. He looked at Leela. Voice hoarse. You're not sick. Leela flinched, then remembered he was dying and had nothing to fear. She put her hands on her hips. Defiant. So what? You chose me over Elisa. How is this my fault? Maxim nodded, whispering, yes. It's my fault. All my fault. Thinking she'd convinced him, Leela demanded a large sum of money. Maxim agreed, promising to deliver it in 3 days. But the next day, Leela's ex-boyfriend arrived. She'd stolen his life savings money meant to save his family and fled under the pretext of relaxing. In the ensuing struggle, the man stabbed Leela in a rage. She fell into a coma from blood loss, her condition critical. And just like in his past life, Maxim wrote love letters to Elisa every day, knowing he'd never have the courage to send them. Before he died, he burned every single one. When the envelopes opened, they held not cherished memories, but only useless apologies. Elisa, I'm sorry. The day Maxim died, I took a day off from work. After long hesitation, I unblocked his familiar profile picture. It was already gray. My body trembled as my mind went blank and chaotic. I sat silently by the window, not knowing what I was waiting for, but daring not to look away for a single second. I waited from dawn to dusk, disappointed by every silent notification. Our chat window remained still. For some reason, I suddenly wept deep, heart-wrenching sobs. I knew Maxim would never message me again. In the face of life and death, all love and hatred seemed to fade. We'd loved each other across 2 lifetimes. But beyond romance, there had been no less affection. In the early morning, I received news of Maxim's death. No farewell, no final words, just silence. The last time we saw each other was when he'd carried Leela into the wedding car. Glancing back at me, I didn't attend his funeral. Thousands of miles apart, never disturbing each other. Perhaps this was our best ending. Maxim, I'll live well and try to forget you. I hope you don't come looking for me again. The end.